The emergency pod hurtled through the atmosphere, its heat shield glowing orange against the violet sky. Inside, Dr. Elara Morgan gripped the manual controls, sweat beading on her forehead as warning lights flashed across the console. The research vessel Artemis had disintegrated in orbit, leaving her the sole survivor with only seconds to make decisions that would determine whether she lived or died. "Come on, you piece of junk," she muttered, fighting against gravity in fear as the alien planet's surface rushed toward her. The dense canopy of towering trees, unlike anything she'd ever seen on Earth, provided no clear landing zone. Elara braced for impact as the pod crashed through layers of foliage, bouncing violently before skidding to a halt in a clearing that glowed with an ethereal blue light. Silence. Then the hiss of the emergency door releasing. Elara's hands trembled as she unstrapped herself, checking for injuries. A gash on her forearm, bruised ribs, but nothing life-threatening. The xenobiologist in her immediately took note of her surroundings despite the dire circumstances. The air was breathable according to her instruments, humidity at 89%, ambient temperature a balmy 27 degrees Celsius. "Small mercies," she whispered, gathering her emergency pack and surveying the damage to the pod. The communication array was completely destroyed, and the beacon functioned intermittently at best. Without repairs, no one would find her. Night fell quickly on this unnamed world, and with darkness came revelation. The entire jungle pulsed with bioluminescence, flowers that opened to release glowing spores, vines that twined up massive tree trunks emitting soft golden light, and creatures that flitted between branches trailing phosphorescent patterns in their wake. Elara set up a perimeter around the damaged pod, her scientific curiosity momentarily overshadowing her fear. She activated her datapad, its battery at 62%, and began recording observations. "Day 1 on uncharted planet," she spoke clearly into the device. "Preliminary observations suggest an ecosystem evolved to maximize energy absorption and transformation. Bioluminescence appears to be the dominant trait across species boundaries, possibly indicating shared evolutionary pathways or adaptive convergence." A distant howl echoed through the jungle, followed by answering calls that surrounded her position. Elara's hand moved to her sidearm, standard issue for research missions since the Proxima Centauri disaster, but she kept recording. Local fauna communicate through vocalizations. Potential pack hunting behavior observed. She paused, listening to the patterns. No, not hunting calls. More like territorial signals. The first week passed in a blur of survival tasks and scientific documentation. Elara established a base camp, tested local water sources, finding them remarkably clean and mineral-rich, and catalogued over 50 new plant species. The protein bars in her emergency kit wouldn't last forever, so she cautiously sampled fruits that her analyzer deemed non-toxic, finding some that tasted like spiced honey and others like bitter chocolate. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by dreams of Earth and the colleagues she'd lost when the Artemis malfunctioned. During daylight hours, she attempted repairs on the communication system, but crucial components were beyond salvation. Her only hope was the emergency beacon, now functioning at 30% capacity, enough to be detected by a passing ship, but only if someone happened to be searching in this remote sector. On the 8th day, Elara realized she wasn't alone. Footprints, distinctly bipedal but not human, appeared near her water collection system. Items in camp seemed subtly rearranged. Once, returning from gathering specimens, she glimpsed a tall figure watching from the jungle's edge, vanishing when she called out. That night, as the jungle's glow pulsed like a heartbeat around her, Elara made a decision. Rather than hiding, she placed her most interesting specimens outside her shelter, an offering of scientific curiosity. "I know you're watching," she said to the darkness. "I mean no harm to this world. I'm just trying to survive until rescue comes." She paused, wondering if anything understood her words. "If you're interested in cultural exchange, so am I." The jungle fell silent, even the constant chorus of insect-like creatures pausing as if listening. Elara waited, heart pounding, until fatigue overcame vigilance and she retreated into her shelter. She didn't see the slender, luminescent hand that reached from the shadows to touch the specimens she'd arranged, nor did she notice the intricate pattern of glowing symbols left etched into the soil, the first message of many that would change the course of two worlds. Morning broke with an electric blue sunrise filtering through the canopy. Elara awoke with a start, immediately noticing something different. The specimens she'd left outside were arranged in a perfect spiral, and beside them lay an unfamiliar fruit with translucent skin that revealed pulsing golden seeds within. "First contact," she whispered, scanning the tree line. The datapad recorded as she circled the arrangement, documenting the intricate symbols etched into the soil, flowing curves intersecting with sharp angles that somehow conveyed meaning beyond language. For 3 more days, Elara continued the silent exchange. She would leave objects, a sample of earth cotton from her shirt, a sketch of solar systems, a prism that split light into rainbows, and by morning, they would be rearranged with new offerings beside them. On the 4th night, as bioluminescent insects danced in spiraling patterns overhead, Elara decided to wait. She positioned herself at the edge of camp, recorder running, and remained perfectly still as darkness deepened. Hours passed before the foliage rustled. A figure emerged from the jungle, tall and slender with skin that shimmered with patterns of light that shifted with each movement. Elara held her breath as the being approached her display, kneeling gracefully to examine her latest offering, a hologram of Earth's oceans. "Hello," she said softly, unable to remain silent any longer. The figure whirled, and Elara found herself staring into eyes as green as the deepest parts of the Amazon, pupilless eyes that seemed to see through her. The being's face was almost human, but with high, sharp cheekbones and delicate features that glowed from within. Elara decided based on the lean musculature of his bare chest, wore only a simple garment of woven fibers around his waist. "You speak," he said, his voice resonating with harmonics that made Elara's skin tingle. "Yet your light is dim. You understand English?" Elara stood slowly, keeping her movements non-threatening. The being tilted his head. "I understand vibration and meaning. Your words carry both." He gestured to his temple, where intricate patterns pulsed beneath his iridescent skin. "I am Thorn, of the Luminari. I'm Dr. Elara Morgan, xenobiologist from Earth." She pointed skyward. "My ship crashed. I'm stranded." Thorn circled her, curiosity replacing caution. "Why do you collect pieces of our world? These plants, these stones, they are already yours to experience." "I study life. Different worlds, different forms of evolution." Elara gestured to her datapad. "I record what I learned so others can understand." "Understanding without experiencing," Thorn mused, touching the datapad gently. It responded to his touch, screen brightening. "Fascinating and limited." His eyes met hers. "You are not what I expected. The Luminari elders speak of star travelers as destroyers." "Some might be," Elara admitted. "But I came to learn, not to take." Dawn approached, the jungle's bioluminescence dimming as purple light filtered through the canopy. Thorn glanced upward, his skin's patterns shifting to deeper blues. "I must go. Others watch and would not approve of this meeting." He hesitated, then held out a hand. In his palm lay a small sphere that glowed with the same patterns as his skin. "If you seek knowledge truly, place this where two waters meet when tomorrow's darkness falls. I will find you." Before Elara could respond, Thorn melted back into the jungle, moving with such fluid grace that the foliage barely stirred. She stood alone, the sphere warm in her hand, heart pounding with the realization that everything had changed. In her 15 years of exobiology research, Elara had documented hundreds of alien species, but never one that walked, talked, and reasoned like humans. The implications were staggering. convergent evolution across star systems, or perhaps something more profound about the nature of sentience itself. That night, she followed a stream until it joined a larger river, two waters meeting beneath a canopy opening that revealed unfamiliar stars. The sphere pulsed brighter as she placed it at the water's edge, its light rippling across the surface. "You came," Thorn's voice startled her as he emerged from the shadows, his skin now patterned with swirling greens and golds that matched the jungle around them. "Most would fear." "Fear doesn't advance knowledge," Elara replied, though her racing pulse betrayed her bravado. "And I have many questions." Thorn smiled, an expression surprisingly human on his alien features. "As do I, Star Traveler." "As do I." Days blended into weeks as Elara and Thorn established a rhythm of exchange. Each evening, he would appear at their meeting place by the river confluence, bringing knowledge of Terra Lux, the name his people gave this world, while she shared stories of Earth and its diverse ecosystems. "Your oceans fascinate me," Thorn said one night, his fingers tracing the holographic images from Elara's datapad. "Water that moves with celestial bodies, creatures that migrate across entire planets." His skin rippled with patterns of blue and silver. The Luminari were once travelers too, before the Great Isolation. "What changed?" Elara asked, sketching Thorn's likeness in her journal. She had begun documenting the relationship between his emotional states and the bioluminescent patterns that flowed across his skin, a language more honest than words. Thorn's light dimmed, patterns slowing to a somber pulse. "War. Destruction. The usual reasons beings retreat from connection." He picked up a stone, skipping it across the water. "Our ancestors came to Terra Lux seeking sanctuary. They found it, but fear calcified into dogma. Now we hide, protecting the World Gate while forgetting why we once valued exploration." "World Gate?" Elara lowered her pencil. Thorn's patterns flashed with alarm, the equivalent of a blush, she'd learned. "I speak too freely with you." He moved closer, his scent like ozone after lightning. "There are secrets I am forbidden to share, even with one whose mind shines as yours does." Their knees touched as they sat beside the water, and Elara felt the now familiar electricity that sparked between them, a biochemical reaction she'd first attributed to their different physiologies but now recognized as something more primal. "Why do you risk coming here?" she asked, watching his patterns shift to the warmer hues she'd come to associate with emotional intimacy. "Your people would punish you if they knew." "They already have." Thorn touched a scar at his throat where the light patterns were interrupted. "I questioned too much," challenged tradition. "My light was dimmed as penalty, a portion of my connection to the collective consciousness severed." His fingers found hers in the darkness. "Perhaps that's why I can see you differently than others would. I'm already apart." The touch of his hand sent waves of warmth through Elara's body. Weeks of isolation before meeting Thorn had left her starved for connection, and their growing intellectual intimacy had evolved into something she didn't want to, categorize through scientific observation. "Show me," she whispered, moving closer. "Show me how the Luminari share knowledge." Thorn's patterns accelerated, rippling across his skin in cascades of gold and emerald. "It is intimate. More than words. I'm not afraid." Elara guided his hand to her temple. His touch was gentle as his fingertips connected with her skin, and suddenly her mind exploded with sensation, colors beyond her visual spectrum, scents that told stories of ancient forests, the feeling of photosynthesis as energy transformed within cellular structures. She gasped as Thorn's consciousness brushed against hers, alien yet achingly familiar in its curiosity and wonder. When the connection broke, they were breathing heavily, faces inches apart. Elara felt tears on her cheeks, joy, overwhelm, the sheer beauty of experiencing the world through his perception. "Now you understand," Thorn whispered, his own eyes luminous with emotion. "Why my people fear outsiders. This connection, it changes both who share it." Their first kiss was hesitant, exploratory, his lips cooler than human temperature, tingling with subtle electricity that danced between them. As they embraced beneath the alien stars, Elara knew she had crossed a threshold from which science offered no return path. Later, as they lay together on the soft moss of the riverbank, Thorn traced patterns on her skin, temporarily transferring his bioluminescence to her through a biochemical reaction that made her laugh with delight. "Your scientists would want to study us, wouldn't they?" he asked, suddenly serious. "If they knew about the Luminari, about the gate." Elara couldn't lie. "Some would. Others would protect your sovereignty." She propped herself up on one elbow. "But I need to understand, what is this gate?" Thorn was silent for a long moment, his patterns shifting through deep purples and blues of contemplation. Finally, he made a decision. "Tomorrow, I will show you. But you must promise to tell no others if rescue comes." His eyes held hers. "Some knowledge changes worlds, Elara. Some connections cannot be broken without destroying both joined beings." As dawn approached, Elara watched Thorn disappear into the jungle, her body still humming with the echo of his touch, her mind expanded by glimpses of perception she had never imagined possible, and her heart torn between worlds. Elara didn't recognize the symptoms at first, the itching beneath her skin, the fever that built slowly through the morning. By midday, angry red welts covered her arms where she'd brushed against a flowering vine during specimen collection. "Stupid," she muttered, fumbling for her medkit. The analyzer beeped a warning: unknown toxin, severe allergic reaction probable. The antihistamines she injected barely touched the spreading inflammation. By sunset, when she was to meet Thorn, Elara could barely stand, her vision blurring as she stumbled toward their meeting place. She collapsed before reaching the river, consciousness fading as the jungle's bioluminescence swirled around her in dizzying patterns. Through the haze of fever, she felt cool hands lifting her, a voice calling her name with harmonics that resonated through her bones. "Poison Bloom," Thorn's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Hold on, Elara. I must take you to the healers." "Can't." She managed, knowing what this meant. "Your people, forbidden. Your life matters more than our laws," came his fierce reply. Elara drifted in and out of awareness as Thorn carried her through the jungle, moving with preternatural speed. The whisper of foliage, the splash of water crossings, and finally, voices speaking in a language of light and sound that bypassed her ears and resonated directly in her mind. When her eyes opened again, she lay in a chamber whose walls seemed alive, pulsing with the same bioluminescence as Thorn's skin, but in vast, complex patterns that shifted constantly. Above her, a domed ceiling revealed stars through what appeared to be living crystal. Luminari moved around her, their skin patterns communicating in flashes too rapid for her to comprehend. "She wakes," a female voice said. A luminari with silver-white patterns approached, placing cool hands on Elara's forehead. "The toxin is neutralized, but her system remains weak." "Thank you, Healer Vex," Thorn replied, his relief evident in the brightening patterns across his chest. He knelt beside Elara. "You're in Lumina, our city." "I had no choice." Despite her weakness, Elara struggled to sit up, awe overcoming discomfort. The city spread out beyond the healing chamber, a vast network of living structures that grew from and with the jungle itself. Bridges of twisted vines connected tree platforms hundreds of meters tall. Everywhere, luminari moved through the spaces, their bodies creating a constant symphony of light that seemed to be both communication and art. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Like nothing I could have imagined." "The council gathers to decide your fate," Healer Vex said, her tone neutral but her patterns showing concern. "Bringing an outsider to Lumina, especially to the heart of the city, is unprecedented." "I would do it again," Thorn declared, taking Elara's hand. The intimacy of the gesture was not lost on the healer, whose patterns flickered with surprise. "You've bonded," Vex observed. This complicates matters further. Before Elara could respond, the chamber's entrance parted like living curtains, admitting 3 elder luminari whose skin patterns were so complex and layered they resembled moving tapestries of light. The room fell silent as they approached, even the walls dimming in apparent deference. Thorn, once of the keeper caste, now diminished, the central elder spoke, his voice reverberating with authority. "You have broken our most sacred law." Elder Oris, Thorn bowed his head but did not release Elara's hand. "I accept the consequences, but this outsider would have died. Her death serves no purpose, her life may yet bring understanding." Oris turned his gaze to Elara, and she felt the weight of ancient wisdom pressing against her consciousness. "You are the first star traveler to enter Lumina in 7 generations. The last brought destruction that still scars our collective memory." Summoning her strength, Elara met his gaze. "I came to learn, not to harm. My presence here was accidental, but meeting your people has been the greatest discovery of my life." She squeezed Thorn's hand. "I will protect your secrets if allowed to keep them." The 3 elders communicated in rapid light patterns, a private conference that excluded even the other luminari present. Finally, Oris spoke again. "You will be tested," he declared. "If your mind can withstand the truth of what we guard, perhaps ancient wounds may begin to heal." He gestured to Thorn. "When she is strong enough, bring her to the Nexus. The gate will judge what we cannot." After the council departed, Elara sagged against Thorn, the brief exchange having depleted her recovering strength. "What is this test? What Nexus?" Thorn's patterns swirled with complicated emotions, hope, fear, determination. "Rest now," he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers in the luminary gesture of intimate connection. "Tomorrow you will see what my ancestors crossed galaxies to protect, and why your people can never find this world." That night, as Elara recovered in the healing chamber, Thorn remained by her side, his presence a constant comfort. When the city's lights dimmed in collective rest cycle, he slipped beneath the living fabric covers beside her, gathering her against his chest where she could feel the steady rhythm of his dual heartbeats. "If I never see Earth again," she murmured, drifting between wakefulness and sleep, "at least I've seen the stars from both worlds." His arms tightened around her. "There are more worlds than you know, Elara Morgan," he whispered. "And tomorrow, you'll understand why some doors between them must remain closed." Part 5, Worlds Between Worlds. The Nexus chamber lay beneath the ancient roots of what Elara could only describe as a world tree, a living entity that dwarfed Earth's largest sequoias, its trunk wide enough to house the entire healing complex within hollowed chambers. As Thorn led her downward through spiraling passages, the city's ambient bioluminescence gave way to a deeper, more primal light that seemed to pulse from the walls themselves. "The oldest records say our ancestors found this place empty, but alive," Thorn explained, his hand steady against the small of her back as they descended. "The gate existed before us, perhaps before this world formed. We became its guardians, not its creators." Elara's scientific mind raced with questions, but awe kept her silent as they entered a vast circular chamber. The space was dominated by a pool of what appeared to be liquid light, a shifting, swirling vortex of luminescence that defied physics as she understood it. Around the pool's edge, 12 luminari elders maintained a silent vigil, their bodies connected in patterns of light that flowed between them like living circuitry. Elder Oris stepped forward, acknowledging their arrival with a subtle pattern shift. "The outsider comes willingly?" "I do," Elara answered before Thorn could speak. 5 weeks on this world had taught her enough about luminari culture to understand the importance of personal declaration. "What you witness now has been seen by only 3 non-luminari in our recorded history," Oris intoned. "The gate connects realities that should remain separate, dimensions whose laws of physics differ enough that prolonged contact creates instability." At his gesture, the patterns around the pool intensified. The liquid light responded, swirling faster until its center opened like the iris of an enormous eye, revealing elsewhere. Ilara gasped as visions formed within the portal, worlds upon worlds, some recognizable with familiar celestial geometries, others so alien that her mind struggled to process their forms. We maintain the balance, Oris continued. When the barriers between realities thin naturally, what some worlds call convergences or alignments, we ensure controlled exchange rather than catastrophic collapse. Ilara stepped closer, drawn by both scientific curiosity and something deeper, a recognition that transcended rational thought. Within the swirling portal, she glimpsed Earth, but also countless other possibilities, Earths where history took different paths, worlds where humans never evolved, dimensions where the very concept of life manifested through patterns of energy rather than biology. This is what brought your people here, she whispered, understanding dawning. You're refugees from another reality. Yes, Thorn confirmed, his patterns solemn. Our ancestral home was destroyed and an uncontrolled convergence was exploited by beings seeking power. The Luminari who escaped vowed to prevent such catastrophe elsewhere. Oris approached Ilara, his ancient eyes evaluating. Now you understand our secrecy. Your science would name this gate a treasure, a resource to be studied and eventually exploited. We have seen the consequences. Before Ilara could respond, a new sound cut through the chamber, a rhythmic beeping that originated from the communicator in her pocket. She withdrew it with trembling hands, staring at the display in disbelief. A ship, she breathed. Someone's found my beacon. The atmosphere in the chamber shifted instantly, patterns of alarm rippling through the gathered Luminari. Oris's expression hardened. You must go, he commanded. Leave this world before others follow. Wait. Thorn stepped between them, his patterns flaring with determination. The connection is already established. Ilara's presence here proves contact is possible without destruction. He turned to her, taking both her hands. You understand now why this place must be protected, but also why isolation has weakened us. We've forgotten that guardianship requires understanding of what we guard against. Ilara's heart pounded as the communicator continued its insistent beeping. A rescue ship meant return to Earth, to colleagues and research and everything she had built her life around. But Thorn, and the knowledge of the gate, represented something she had never imagined possible. The ship will land near my crash site within hours, she said, mind racing. I could tell them the planet is uninhabitable. Radiation, toxins, something to ensure no one follows. Deception creates its own instability, Oris warned. Like energy, truth finds its level eventually. Thorn's patterns shifted to a configuration Ilara had never seen before, a complex interplay of determination, hope, and something she recognized from their most intimate moments. There is another way, he said, turning to address both her and the council. The ancient texts speak of Luminari who served as envoys between worlds during controlled convergences. With the council's permission, I would take this role. Murmurs and light patterns rippled through the gathered elders. Oris studied Thorn with narrowed eyes. You propose to leave Terralux? To accompany her? To build a bridge, Thorn corrected. One person who understands both worlds can ensure neither threatens the other. I am already diminished, my connection to the collective is incomplete. I can adapt to her world in ways others cannot. Ilara felt dizzy with the implications. Thorn, your physiology, Earth's atmosphere, gravity. The gate can adjust my form enough to survive, he said with confidence that silenced her concerns. I've studied the ancient techniques since meeting you. His eyes held hers, vulnerable despite his certainty. If you want me to come. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions about belonging and purpose. Ilara thought of her life on Earth, respected but often isolated in her dedication to understanding alien life. The irony that she had to travel to an alien world to find true connection wasn't lost on her. The council must deliberate, Oris announced, interrupting the moment. This decision affects more than two beings. As the elders consulted in their light language, Elara and Thorn stepped away from the gate, standing close enough that their arms touched. I never expected rescue, she admitted. I'd almost stopped hoping for it. Because you found something here worth staying for? Thorn asked softly. Elara smiled, touching the patterns on his forearm, watching them respond to her touch. Because I found someone who sees the universe as I do, full of questions worth asking, connections worth making, knowledge worth protecting. Then regardless of their decision, he said, we've already changed two worlds. The council's deliberation was brief by luminary standards. Horus approached them with a solemnity that belied the subtle hope patterns visible at his temples. The gate will open one last time for your departure, he announced. Thorn may accompany you as our first envoy in 7 generations, provided both of you swear to protect the location of Terralux and the existence of the gate from any who would misuse such knowledge. Relief and joy surged through Elara, but Thorn tensed beside her. And my return? Will I be permitted to maintain connection with my people? Horus's patterns showed complicated emotion. The gate responds to those it knows. When the next natural convergence occurs, what Earth measures as approximately 7 years hence, you may attempt contact. If your mission as envoy serves both worlds, the way will open. The communicator beeped again, more urgently. Their time was running short. There is one more thing, Horus said, his tone gentler. The transformation process will preserve your consciousness, Thorn, but your connection to our collective light will diminish further. Your patterns may fade entirely among the humans. Elara understood the magnitude of this sacrifice, to lose the most fundamental aspect of luminary identity, their living light language. Not entirely, she said with sudden inspiration, turning to Thorn. I've observed how your bioluminescence transfers temporarily through biochemical exchange. With research, we might find a way to sustain it. Hope flared in Thorn's patterns. The scientist in you never rests, he said with affection. Nor the explorer in you, she replied, squeezing his hand. As they prepared to leave, the gates swirling with increased activity, Elara took one last look at the Nexus chamber, at the impossible convergence of science and mystery she would spend a lifetime trying to understand. The rescue ship waiting above represented one future, Thorn beside her represented another. Somehow, against all probability, she had found a path that honored both. Ready? She asked him as the gate began to reconfigure his molecular structure, subtle changes rippling through his form to prepare him for Earth's environment. Thorn's patterns flared with the brightest light she had ever seen from him, joy and fear and love intermingled in a display that needed no translation. 2 worlds are never enough for those who truly see the stars, he replied, stepping with her toward the unknown. The gate closed behind them, but the connection it forged, between woman and alien, between worlds and possibilities, remained unbroken, a testament to the most powerful force in any universe, the courage to reach across boundaries and find understanding in the most unexpected places.